So many wives are feeling unsafe. They're
Yeah.
feeling unsafe with their husband and they don't know how to get that safety. And so they are trying to control, they are trying to push, they're trying to somehow get him to be safe for them. And either they're pushing or else they're just kind of numbing out now. They're in self-protection. They have disconnected because they don't know how to get that met with him. We're really in survival mode.
On today's episode of Empowered in Health, I have Cara Nitz here, and Cara is a certified life and transformation coach and also trauma informed. And the work she does between her and her husband related to marriage, related to relationships, and related to encouraging women with this concept of how do we take care of ourselves, but also continue to relay our needs and talk about our needs in our marriages and beyond is just so transformative and so profound. And so, Cara, I'm so grateful you're here today, my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I really am. This is such an important topic.
It's such an important topic. And, one of those topics that I feel like, for whatever reason, can be very uncomfortable. It can be very
Mhm.
overwhelming, very uncomfortable. I know for me personally, when it comes to talking about my marriage, talking about the ways that our relationship has felt hard, talking about how intimacy has changed, like those topics can be really tricky to navigate and they can make you very uncomfortable. And so, one of the things I wanted to talk about, Cara, in the beginning here is hearing a little bit more about how you started in this work. Before we hit record today, you shared a little bit with me, but please share more here because I'd love for the audience to hear a little bit more of your story and just what led you to the work you're doing now.
Yeah, well, it's really from my own journey. My husband and I, we've been married for almost 20 years, and we have 5 kiddos and a million animals now. We live on a homestead. But we have gone through so much struggle and pain in our marriage. I mean, without our commitment and our faith in God, we would have divorced. I mean, probably in year one. We from our honeymoon, we were alone. Like we were separate on our honeymoon. We didn't even
Wow.
really. It was kind of a nightmare.
Wow.
um, that pain just kind of went throughout. I mean, it's not like we didn't have any good times, but we had so much struggle, and I just knew that God had something more for me in this journey than just my own personal growth and healing and my husband's. And so I just waited and waited for him. I wanted to jump the gun. I wanted to start some things, but I waited for him, and he spoke so clearly to my husband and I one day when we were driving to the mountains of Arkansas, and he just put it on our hearts. He wanted us to do this course, and that's really where it all began, was with our Healing Your Marriage course, and it's just been incredible since then.
Oh, I'm sure. And I'm sure you've learned so much as a couple, but also from all of the people you're working with. I know he works with husbands and you work with wives and you kind of collectively come together to have all kinds of conversations. And so that's something I'd love to start to kind of dip into a little bit more, Cara, is with the work you've done and the women you serve and the membership you run, the course you have, just kind of what you've learned over time from the people you work with. Tell me a little bit about just common themes that you feel like have come up with the women that you speak to, and what seem to be the big pain points in marriage that inevitably affect health, affect stress, affect like
Mhm.
how we feel day in and day out. Like, talk a little bit about that.
I think one of the biggest things that I see in women, and I saw it in myself so much, and I didn't know what to call it, right? I didn't know what it really was so many wives are feeling unsafe. They're
Yeah.
feeling unsafe with their husband, and they don't know how to get that safety. And so they are trying to control, they are trying to push, they're trying to somehow get him to be safe for them. And either they're pushing or else they're just kind of numbing out now. They're in self-protection. They have disconnected because they don't know how to get that met with him. And when anytime we're living in that bracing or that self-protection, we're really in survival mode.
Yeah.
And that is so stressful for our bodies. As you know,
Yeah.
our adrenals are now on overdrive, and we are, the hormones are now getting all imbalanced. And it's just, we're not thriving, we're not living from this full whole place, and it impacts every part of our lives, not just our marriage.
Yeah, it really does. I'm curious, when you say unsafe, have you identified maybe a pattern as far as why that comes up for women or why they feel particularly unsafe? Is it something that's happened or something that is obviously unique to them? Like, tell me a little bit more about that because I'm curious.
Thank you for asking, because I think a lot of times people think unsafe, like, oh, there's some, like, their husband's physically abusive. That is actually not what I'm talking about. Most of the husbands are not. What is happening is the husband doesn't know how to hold space for his wife's emotions. He
Yes.
doesn't know how to have a healthy conversation. He doesn't know how to offer her validation and love and just be, right? Just be present.
Yeah.
And so instead, he's getting defensive, he's shutting down, and she feels alone. She feels like she can't express herself because she's going to be met with shutdown, defensiveness, all kinds of opposite reactions than when she needs. And so that's where a lot of that unsafety comes in.
Yeah, I love that you shared that because it's just a good clarifying kind of energy as far as what that really means. And I know I've experienced this in my own relationship, and I've talked
Mhm.
to friends and other women in my circle who have experienced this level of unsafety, which at the end of the day is just not feeling heard, just not
Yeah.
feeling seen, not feeling understood, not feeling like you're on the same page as far as connection in a lot of areas of your relationship. And it really can turn into this massive component of stress and
Yeah.
unrest. And I know for women, especially, like it just can feel so emotionally heavy when you're trying to navigate, okay, how do I express my needs? But also at the same time, I wish my needs were just understood. And that's one of the
Mhm.
things I'd love to kind of talk about next, because I know as women, we kind of get into our heads about, I feel like I don't want to always have to say XYZ. Like in some ways, I feel like we expect that our husbands should just know, or the people around us should just know the ways we need to feel supported, or the ways that we need to feel loved, heard, seen, etc. And I'd love for you to talk about that because that's a big thing. Like you have to really understand the value and the importance of communicating your needs. And even in ways where, it's not always seamless or easy, it's so incredibly important. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think it starts actually so much deeper because a lot of wives, they're not in tune with what's going on in their bodies.
Yeah.
They're actually in this, again, they're in this survival mode. And it could be other things added as well. The marriage stress is probably a big part of it, but it's like then life over here and life over there. And so they're just trying to like survive,
Yeah.
and they're missing out on the being part. They're, instead of being relaxed into their femininity and knowing who they are and what's going on and how to meet their own needs and what's going on in their hearts, they are just grasping to try to be okay, to try to feel seen, to try to feel loved. And so the first thing really is to come back to yourself,
Yeah.
right? Come back to being quiet, being still, and asking, what am I feeling today? Being with yourself, validating, loving, giving yourself compassion, and asking, what do I need?
Yeah.
And knowing, I think one of the most empowering things that I teach wives is how to create safety for themselves with God, and
Yeah.
how to get their needs met with
Yes.
God and with themselves. Because it doesn't depend on your husband. It
Yeah.
really doesn't.
Yeah.
You can do those things no matter what he is choosing.
Yes, that's such a good reminder. And one of the things I wanted to kind of recap that's really important for everyone to hear is that it's not anyone else's responsibility. It's not our husbands, it's not anyone else as far as relationships go, it's not our children, it's not the people around us. Like it really is us. Like we have to continue to figure out how do we sit with ourselves and how do we, to your point, get quiet enough and pause enough to continue to learn like what do we really need? What are we
Mhm.
craving? And what does that look like in a way that we actually can express that to the people around us? Cara, I would love for you to share a little bit in your experience why you feel like women struggle a little bit with this concept of getting quiet and sitting with themselves. I've seen this in my work quite a bit, this concept of we're go, go, go. There's so much going on. To your point, life is happening everywhere. And it can feel not only a little bit unnerving, but also very uncomfortable to actually pause and sit and say, I need to like be with myself for a minute and actually tune into what it is that's going to fill my cup. And that takes intention. Why do you feel like women maybe struggle with that a little bit?
Yeah, and that was me too, because when I was going to, I was in so much stress in my marriage and other things that it ended up putting me into adrenal fatigue. And I
Yeah.
remember my naturopathic doctor, she wanted me to meditate. She wanted me to meditate. I think it was just like 5 or 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like, ugh, like I don't want to sit there and just,
Yeah.
and I had such a hard time with it. And
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, so many wives do. And I think part of it, again, we have to go deeper. I always want to go deeper to the deepest root of what's going on. Because if we slap 10 tips on how to do that and try this, and that isn't actually going to bring a lasting transformation. And so when
Yeah.
we get deeper, we need to look at the beliefs that we have. We need to look at the wounds that we're carrying that are unhealed.
Yeah.
And a lot of wives have wounds around their identity, who they are. They have beliefs about their value and that they need to be doing, they need to be performing to have value. And so it's completely anti that to just be. Right? What am I doing? I don't like, I'm not doing anything valuable. I'm worthless right now. I'm wasting time. Um, but when we start to heal some of those things and we come back to giving ourselves permission, seeing ourselves the way God sees us, he says, be still,
Yeah.
right? Be still and know that I'm God. And that's because he loves being with us. He just loves to have us just
Yeah.
sitting with him, right? And soaking in his love and go and checking in with what's going on in our bodies and giving ourselves what we need. And once you start to practice that, it transforms everything and you start to really crave it. You
Yes.
really do.
Yes, it does transform everything. And the thing that I loved that you said the most was around this concept of like really getting deep rooted and understanding that being productive, outwardly doing all the things is not your identity. That's not where your value comes from. And I know I have struggled with that very deeply on my journey. And I've had to really get into very significant like therapeutic support, but also just continuing to try and build my relationship more and more with God and beyond. So I can understand, like you said, I want to see more of how he sees me. I want to actually fully embrace that rather than feeling like I have to constantly exert myself, perform, make an
Mhm.
impact somewhere in order to feel some level of worth and value. And I know that that is a very real thing for women. Cara, I would love your opinion on where do you think that comes from? Like, what do you think actually drives that? Because that is a very real thing for women when we're talking, like, I know for me, when we're talking about the larger picture of wellness and we're talking about how do you actually holistically take care of yourself and how do we look at all of the buckets, not only from fitness and nutrition, but more so spiritual health, relational health, emotional health, mental health. So much of this comes up, this idea of, well, I've attached my worth to this, or something along the way told me that this, and this means success, or this, and this means health. Where, in your opinion, does all of that come from?
I think so much of it comes from when we were little, right? And we
Yeah.
have these foundational. That's when so much what changed in our brains, and so much was formed inside of us. And a lot of times, love was given when we performed. Love was given when we did something right, when we did something good, and love was withdrawn when we did something bad.
Yeah.
We did something wrong. We didn't do enough. We didn't do it right. And maybe that looked like go to your room, right? Maybe that looked like praise for somebody who did better than you. And it can look so many different ways. And not that, our parents are, let's just blame it all on them because they were probably doing the best they could.
Yeah.
But there is this teaching, it's a very sneaky teaching, especially in Christianity. And I think, in culture in general, but where you need to be doing more, you need to do better,
Yeah.
and you need to do right. Don't do wrong, don't be bad, be good.
Yeah.
But that's actually opposite of what God says. He when Jesus was baptized, which was before he did any miracles or did anything like that, God says, "This is my son whom I love,
Yeah.
and I'm well pleased by him." Because we don't need to perform to earn God's love.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is something that we learned along the way. And we learned a lot of other probably wounding things, that those are the things that are affecting how we see ourselves, how we see our worth, our value. And that's where this comes from.
Yeah, and it's such a good reminder because there's just a lot that's deep rooted that we don't always give ourselves enough permission to actually recognize and to normalize. And I know along my journey, and I see this with my clients and the women that I serve, there is this level of having to go deep and really think about, where are all these little soundtracks coming from? Like, where did I potentially pick them up? And even if I don't exactly know, realizing that they're there and then working to change the narrative and actually make yourself feel a little bit better day in and day out, because it really is an active practice of starting to work against those mindset soundtracks and those things that we've maybe been conditioned into for so long, to your point, through childhood or whatever it might be. Cara, that kind of
Mhm.
brings me to my next topic, which I want to kind of talk a little bit more, which is more or less the feelings inside of relationships, or the feelings inside of marriage specifically. And I know for me, along my journey, when I reflect, I think a lot about how I thought I needed to know it all, right? Like, I thought I needed to just figure it out. I thought I needed to just keep it all together, so to speak. And
Yeah.
starting to actually express what I needed as a mom had me feeling really guilty, right? It had me feeling filled with shame. Like, this is
Mhm.
your role. This is what you've been called to do. This is what you've been blessed with. Why are you so overwhelmed? Why are you so like discombobulated in your day? Why are you so stressed out? Why can't you just, quote unquote, like I said, figure it out? And I think this is very common for women too, is like, we kind of put our pressure on ourselves and we get into this mindset of, we just need to power through. We need to figure it out. Like, this is where we're being called to go or being called to serve. And it's on us to essentially work through the weeds and make it work. And I know, again, that can come with a lot of emotion. And this is what can keep women stuck, or keep women in this place of feeling like, I don't know how to express my needs, or I don't even know how to talk about this, because I have these overwhelming feelings of guilt and shame, inadequacy, feeling ill equipped, whatever it is. I'm curious if you've heard that from the women you speak with, and kind of talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I just want you to know, and anybody who feels that way, you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
So many of us, that is, and this is again, like you said, it's often hidden. It's often we don't share these things,
Yeah.
but when we don't share them, they stay stuck there, right? That's why there is so much power in being vulnerable and having community. I love my restored membership for this exact reason, because the wives are so vulnerable and they share these things. And I just want you to know, this stuff comes up all the time. And what often happens here is, we're in that survival mode. We have taken on this like we've kind of like put this masculine mask on that we feel like we have to wear, where we're strong, we can handle it all, we can do it.
Yeah.
We got to do the best for our kids, do the best for our marriage, do the best for church, do the best for, right?
Yeah.
But that is this masculine over functioning
Yeah.
that just keeps us in this stressed mode. But what God invites us to, and what we were designed for, is to relax into Him, relax into letting these heavy burdens off, letting Him do the heavy lifting, and coming back to our softness, and staying in touch with what we need and what we're feeling. That's really so powerful. I think a lot of people think femininity, oh, that's like weak, you're quiet, you don't say anything, you don't have any power. Actually, it's very opposite. When you are relaxed in your femininity, you are so powerful.
Yes.
It's when you're stuck in that masculinity, actually, it's very ineffective. It's very draining. It's very reactive instead of, intentional, which is the feminine, right? It's very intentional. But so we get stuck over here with the masculine, but that femininity is available to you at any time. It really is. And it is the best gift you can give yourself, is to come back to that.
It really is. I cannot tell you how much I love that you're sharing this, because this is a huge part of the work I do as a functional women's health coach. It's this concept of, to your point, digging into the femininity piece and really slowing down, because we live in a society where we're programmed in some way to just constantly be in masculine energy and to constantly be overdriving and doing all of the things. And like, to your point, feeling like we have to stay strong and commit to all the things and hold it together for the people. But at some point, our physiology also says, enough is enough. We
Yep.
can't do this for forever. And for me, and the lens I look through, this is where women get so burned out, so stressed to the max, have literally no time at all for themselves, let alone their relationships and their marriages, right? And so I just super appreciate you sharing this because it's such an important reminder for us to remember we have to live in both energy. We cannot realistically continue to function on one side and then feel like we're going to have intention. We're going to be able to slow down. We're going to feel less stressed. We can't do that without the feminine energy. And you really helped us really see that. And I just appreciate it, Cara, because it's such a big piece to overall women's health, you know?
Yeah. Yep, it
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to kind of continue to talk a little bit more about is, like you said, kind of getting into this place of getting still with yourself, getting quiet, remembering who God says you are, all of those things. Talk a little bit about how tangibly, when you're working in your community or in your course, in your membership, when women are in this place and they're struggling and they're trying to figure out, how do I get into my feminine energy more? Or I am really stressed, or I don't know how to express my needs, or I don't know how to sit with myself. What are like the tangible things you help them do, either habit wise or, routine wise, to kind of walk them through this process?
Well, one of the things that I do is I send out daily healing practices, I call them. They're just quick things, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe. It's really up to you. You can make them take 30 if you want. But what they do is they help you to have these felt experiences of safety. Because when we feel safe, so much of the masculine is actually because we are afraid, we're trying to control, we're trying to make things happen to feel okay. So when we invite in safety in a real felt way, right? There's a difference between just telling your brain, yeah, I'm safe with God, right? I'm safe, nothing dangerous is happening, or whether you really feel it, right? There's a difference between saying, yeah, God loves me, or really feeling it deep, deep in you and knowing it to your core that God loves you and what that looks like. And so I invite them into experiencing these things in a felt way. So maybe an example is like, maybe you're sitting with, you're just quiet, right, and you're just noticing what's going on in your body. Like maybe you notice your heart's racing a little bit, your palms are a little sweaty, maybe there's like a lump in your stomach, and you're getting curious, like what am I feeling, what's going on here, where is that coming from? And then you're inviting in God's voice over you in that emotion, right? And what does he say? He says, that matters, that matters to me that you're feeling angry, that matters to me that you're feeling anxious.
Yeah.
I care about you, and you can feel that as long as you need to. I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And so you're creating this safety to actually open your heart, because so many of us were like, okay, I feel a little anxiety. Let's get, I don't have time for that. We got to move on. Like, I don't have time. I don't want to feel that. I'm going to go watch Netflix. I'm going to go do the next thing on my list.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, clean, whatever, but anything but to feel that, because it's scary to
Yeah.
feel those emotions that are painful or
Yeah.
that we think are going to be painful. And so we push them down, we ignore, we distract.
Yeah.
So coming and being present with them and then inviting in that love and compassion for yourself
Yeah.
and agreeing with what God is saying over you. Maybe it's even asking him, like, what are you saying right now to me? Like, what are you doing? And I love to like use my imagination to even envision that. Right.
Yeah.
I love to like envision him wrapping his arms around me
Yeah.
and seeing that, right. And bringing that in, because that is who he is. And that is what he's doing, right.
Yes.
He's that close. He's that present. And he's always that present and that close. It's not like our husband or like someone else that we want to rely on, but they're just not that reliable.
Yeah.
He always is that reliable.
We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to aaronshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is aaronshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation. Yeah, I love that. And it's just a good reminder for us. I think as women, we sometimes forget. I don't know if this is only me. I'm hoping it's not, but I sometimes forget that I literally can just pause and ask for him to speak to me, for to ask for him to just give me some level of comfort in what I'm feeling. And, I know for a lot of women, again, it takes that level of intention and slowing down and being mindful and actually building this self-awareness and this practice. But I forget, like, oh yeah, I can always go there. I can
Mhm.
always go there. And I want women to really embrace this concept that this is a huge piece that's available to you at any point in time in your wellness, this opportunity to just get still and to
Mhm.
accept that wholehearted love and comfort for who you are and who you were created to be. And so I just
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that, Cara, because it's again such a great reminder for us as busy women who are trying to, continue to show up in a lot of areas of our life to remember like we are always held and cared for and loved as long as we are willing to pause enough to actually feel it and to actually receive it.
Mhm.
You know, one
Yeah.
one of the things, Cara, I know that I'd love to touch on too is a little bit more on the intimacy side of marriage. And you and I talked a little bit about this before we hit record today. And I know we've actually talked about it on social a little bit too. But for me, relating it back to this topic of feeling unsafe. And I literally bring that full circle in my brain right now around
Mhm.
why I feel like intimacy in our marriage has felt challenging in certain seasons. And
Mhm.
I'm willing to bet that this is a very real thing for women because when you pair that feeling of I'm not safe slash not feeling heard, not feeling loved, not feeling understood, most of all, not feeling connected, the idea of intimacy is literally the last on the list. I know this is how I feel. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that this is something that you've come across in your work. So, will you talk a little bit and share a little bit about just joy and intimacy in relationships and in marriage specifically, and kind of how you navigate this in different seasons of your life when you have a lot going on, when your stress is really high, when you maybe feel a little bit unsafe? Like, what do you actually do, and how do you coach women through this piece of the journey?
Yeah. And this again, it can go so deep. It can go, and I like to take each wife and go get deep with them and see what's really at the root. Because yes, there can be the feelings of unsafety. And then the last thing you want to do when you're having sex, when you're opening yourself up that way, that's so vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? That is the most vulnerable that you can be with someone. And so safety, right, equals vulnerability, but unsafety equals like no,
Yeah.
closed down, shut down, like curled up, right?
Yeah.
And so that is a big part of it. Another big part of it, though, is the masculine feminine dynamic.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys actually aren't really stepping into their masculine strength. They are struggling with a lot of other things. And in culture nowadays, there's a lot of like nice guy tendencies and, passivity, people pleasing, where they kind of let their wives run the show. And that only leads to this masculine feminine imbalance where he's not stepping into his strength. She feels like she has to do that. She has to lead now because nobody is.
Yeah.
And so it's this masculine against masculine, which does not lead to attraction,
Yeah.
right? Attraction is this masculine, feminine, like magnetism. It just pulls you together. And my husband and I had this so off for most of our marriage.
Yeah.
And I thought I just wasn't going to be attracted to him. I really did. I thought I'm never going to be that attracted to him. But
Yeah.
once we got this balanced, it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
where did that come from? And it was
Yeah.
incredible. It was like
Yeah.
a honeymoon, 15 years down the road,
Yeah.
all the time. But so that is such a big part that I don't think many people are talking about. But that is a big deal. And no matter what he's doing, I want you to know, even if he isn't in his masculine strength, you can relax into your femininity, and
Yeah.
that can change the atmosphere of the marriage and really inspire him in ways you never imagined. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of it too. And I also think another part is that so many wives are so out of touch with pleasure
Yeah.
because they're in this survival mode, they're in this stressed state, and the last thing that you're thinking about is pleasure. You maybe are so out of touch with what even feels good to you,
Yeah.
or maybe you're not feeling relaxed enough to enjoy pleasure. And so pursuing pleasure is another thing I really walk with wives through because it's so important.
Yeah.
God has joy for you. He wants you experiencing joy to the fullest. And
Yes.
so inviting that in and enjoying it, that is such a beautiful gift we can give ourselves.
It really is. Cara, will you talk a little bit about, you said you got to this place in your marriage where you finally figured out kind of how to balance that masculine and feminine energy. Can you share a little bit more about what that looked like or what that process was to kind of get to that point?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big process.
Yeah.
It's not an easy journey, and I'm not ever going to sugarcoat it because it isn't. There's a lot of programming behind those things. There's a lot of unhealed wounds. And for us, right, because we were in it for so long, we were in it for 15 years of living that out. It
Yeah.
was very challenging to now step into another space, into a new energy.
Yeah.
And so we had to give each other a lot of grace. We had to communicate a lot. We had to really pursue healing for ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, and even if he wouldn't have, and our journeys weren't like in sync. It wasn't like he's crushing it with his healing journey and I am too.
Yeah.
No, it started more with me. I kind of took the lead in that, which makes sense because I was kind of leading everything anyway. And he kind of followed later in his own way.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, a lot of pain with all that too. But again, what I always say is when wives relax in their femininity, that can inspire him in a new way. And I saw that in my own marriage. I
Yeah.
saw where my femininity and relaxing into that woke something up in him.
Yeah.
And he wanted to grow. He wanted to pursue these things. He wanted to, do that work that was needed for him. And it wasn't about me. I wasn't saying, hey, when are you going to book that call? When are you going to, read that book? When are you going to start doing the things you said you're going to do? It was really himself that it was self-led when he was inspired by my femininity. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's deep though.
Yeah.
It's very multi-layered. It's not something that, just switches quickly, unfortunately, but it's worth it. It's
Yeah.
worth it.
It is worth it. And it's just that work that you kind of really have to mindfully choose. And,
Mhm.
one of the things you just talked about was kind of your individual healing journeys. And that's one thing I want to kind of call to attention is because there's different relationships in this process. There's the relationship you have with each other, but then there's also the individual relationships that you have with yourself. And that also has to be a part of the overall journey, the overall connection, and the overall communication. And I really appreciate how you talked about you were each kind of on your own little healing journey in addition to making sure you were doing more communicating. You were starting to, read books or bring in resources, go to additional support services, whatever it might have been, because it really has to be this multifaceted approach. And one of the things that I, again, really appreciate about what you're saying is how you have to be nurturing yourself while you're also trying to continue to figure out how do I, work on my marriage? How do I work on my relationship, et cetera?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of the most important things, right? Because you cannot, I think a lot of couples come in and they meet with us too, and they think that we're gonna fix the marriage without actual them changing, right? What we need to realize is each person needs to heal. Each person needs to come back to their real identity.
Yeah.
Then you're bringing in, right, a healed, growing person. Otherwise, you're bringing the same people and you're expecting a different result. It
Yeah.
doesn't just change because you got 5 tips for how to communicate better.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to do the individual work. And like I said, one person can do it, even if the other person isn't. I hear that so much. I mean, so many of the wives I work with, they're saying, yeah, my husband's not doing this. My husband isn't, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. You
Yeah.
still can make such an impact, and your journey is going to be so beautiful for you. Like,
Yeah.
this changes your life as a woman,
Yeah.
not to mention how it can affect your marriage. And you need that. You need to relax. You need to come out of that stress mode and heal and, live your life full and
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah, full and whole. That's such a great reminder and so important because to your point, to recap, so many of us have lived a season or are in a season where we really are in survival mode. And
Mhm.
when you're in survival mode, the body is really keeping the score and paying attention, and you're not going to feel as energized, feel as clear-headed, feel as joyful, feel as motivated in your day. Like that, it really does start to backfire. And I love that you're just talking about this in a very real way related to our marriages and our relationships because it's such a big thing that we have to be mindful of. And a lot of the women I know that I speak to, and I'm sure you hear this too, don't always initially make the connection of this survival stress mode to all of the things that are maybe feeling disconnected. And at the end of the day, when we slow down and get a little bit more mindful, it's easier to start to connect the dots. It's easier to start to say, okay, I'm now realizing that living in this energy over here, or choosing things the way I am, or trying to overly control, like you've talked about, is really creating this downstream effect of a lot of disconnect in areas of my life. And so, Cara, the last thing I'd love to talk about before we kind of wrap up is just kind of this idea of health overall. You know, I know you have a health background. You obviously are doing incredible work in the marriage space and in relationships and working a lot with wives. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about just health overall for women when we're talking about relationships, when we're talking about marriage, when we're talking about communicating our needs, or, you know, living in survival mode. Talk about what that means for our overall health and what you continually talk to women about as far as why we need to pay attention to things like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is all this stuff is going on inside of you in the deepest level,
Yeah.
right? It starts with your thoughts and it goes, then it's emotions, and emotions stay stuck in your body when you don't feel them. And so that wreaks havoc on your insides. And when we're not taking care of ourselves, when we're going, we're not resting, right? We're not staying in tune with our body. You don't even know, right? You don't really listen to when your body's sending you cues. You're tired, you're stressed, you need to stop. Don't say yes to that, right?
Yeah.
It's just take a break, say no, it's okay.
Yeah.
We don't, when we're not in tune with those things, and we're not honoring them, right? Sometimes I was in tune with my body really, really well, but I wasn't honoring what was going on. I was saying like, no, just stop it, be quiet, I have to go, I have to
Yeah.
do, I have 5 kids, I have to, right?
Yeah.
It's also honoring that, and that starts with knowing deep felt in you that you are valuable, that you matter, that
Yeah.
you're worth taking care of. Because so many of us, that's actually one of the roots, right? That we actually don't think we are worth taking care of. We have shame, we have insecurity, we feel unloved.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to overperform to
Yes.
feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
And so much of it is the coming back to your heart, right? Showing your own heart, you matter to me, I'm going to create safety for you, I'm going to be here with you. I'm sorry that I wasn't for so long, I'm sorry I ignored you, I'm sorry I pushed you down, but I'm here now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a nap when you need a nap, I'm going to be here with you when you're angry, I'm going to allow you to feel that because you matter to me, and I'm going to show up for you.
Yeah.
That's so impactful.
It's so impactful. And you just nailed, like, you just hit the nail on the head as far as the reminder on how the most important relationship we really have is with ourselves. And
Hmm.
we have to slow down enough and be mindful enough to really tune in to what we need. And I know women everywhere, moms everywhere will relate to this when I say, I know for certain that if someone you love in your life needs something or has something that they're asking for or needs love and care, needs support, needs you to do something, you are there at the drop of a hat because you love and care so much for them. And it really has to always be this constant reminder of that same level of care, love, attention has to be given back to yourself. Because when it's not, you aren't able to fully show up the way you deserve. Like you aren't able to step into the full hearted joy, like you've talked about, Cara. Like that's really so important for our life. And I just really appreciate you just sharing all your incredible expertise today. Like this has just been filled with incredible knowledge about just what we need to understand from the mental and emotional standpoint of our health, especially when we think about relationships in our marriage. You know, there's so many layers, and the more we can slowly unpack it, normalize it, verbalize it, continue to figure out how we intertwine this into the thing that we pay attention to, the better we feel in every aspect of our lives. You
Yeah.
know, really quickly, will you share maybe three quick small tips you would give to someone who's listening to this, who's hearing this and says like, okay, I know I have some things I want to work on emotionally. I know I have some things I'd like to communicate better in my marriage or my relationship. I know that I have to continue to work on, you know, getting out of survival mode and understanding how much love, care, and attention I deserve. What would be three small things you would maybe give them as a starting point to start to slowly work on these things?
Yeah, I would say, the three kind of are going to go together. I think the first and most important thing is to create space to just be.
Yep.
Right? I want you to every day, and maybe multiple times a day. I do this multiple times a day, and it's for a while, like a half an hour, another hour. Like I probably spend 2 to 3 hours a day in more of a quiet space and more of a restful place. And I do a lot of other work there and other
Yeah.
time. So I need that time to really be able to give my best to these other things. But I want you to create that space to do nothing, to rest, to be. And the second thing is I want you during that time to tune into your body.
Yeah.
Scan your body, notice what is going on. Where do I feel tightness? Where do I feel, what am I noticing? What sensations? What emotion am I feeling? And then the third thing, I want you to ask yourself every day, what is my biggest need? What do I need the most today?
Yep.
And then how am I going to meet that?
Yeah.
How, like maybe it's, I need to feel loved. I'm feeling so unloved.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you want to show yourself love today? How do you want to ask God how he's loving you today, right? You can get those needs met, but those three things are so important for every day being able to come overflowing with love, overflowing with peace, grounded and full to your day, to whatever comes, right? Whatever comes, you can handle it because you are really fully you. And that is an incredibly powerful, beautiful woman.
Yes, it is. And something that we have to remember and be reminded of. And it has to be an active priming practice that you choose for yourself every day. And so, Cara, can't thank you enough. Such incredible insight and great tips here at the end. Will you share quickly how, if someone wants to learn more about your membership, your course, how to get connected to the work you're doing? Can you share a little bit more about how they can find you?
Sure. So you can, our website is the www.thewayforlove.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, just cara.nitz. We also have a podcast called the Marriage Unmasked podcast, where we get really honest and real about, we share a lot of our own stories.
Yeah.
We talk about things that real couples are going through, the things that nobody's talking about.
Yeah.
So those are just some resources that'll plug you in quick. I have a lot of free resources that I offer. If you follow me on social media, you can find those and get hooked up with those. And then we also offer coaching, private coaching, couples coaching, and our membership. So yeah,
That's
lots
awesome.
lots to help.
I love that. And we will make sure everything is linked in the show notes of this podcast. So if you are interested in learning more from Cara and her husband and their work, please make sure you check that out to get connected to their website and so much more. And Cara, thank you again for your incredible time today. I'm so grateful for you.
You're welcome. And I'm honored to be here. I'm really thankful.
Such a good conversation. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.